I've been looking forward to rewatching this movie for some time now, but it was not as good as I remembered. There were some things I noticed that I didn't notice, obviously. Now that I do movie reviews, I notice some smaller things where I actually pay attention to the cast most of the time. But in the cast, the voice actors, we got Weird Al as the doll maker. He does a really good job for his very brief role. I can't really say much about his music because I'm not someone that really listens to music that much. Um, I listen to like one person and I don't even really listen to him very often. Anyways, Weird Al is famous for parodies, makes fun of a lot of people. He's had interviews with Eminem and a few other people. He plays the doll maker and he does a good job. He gets killed in a very brutal way for a PG-13 movie. Gets his heart ripped right out of his chest and falls to the ground, and you even see the aftermath. He doesn't just get his heart ripped out and then, they never show you the body again. They show you the body again, and it's decently brutal once again because it's a PG-13 movie. It's pretty brutal for a PG-13 movie. They get really brutal in this. I hate the fact, before I mention the other voice actor, because there's only one other one I want to mention. I hate the fact that they never mentioned that Batman was raped. I know that's probably not something people would expect to hear if they don't know the full backstory. But Batman was dating Talia al Ghul. She drugged his drink in the comics and raped him. That is how Damian Wayne, the newest Robin, was made. By rape. Well, in this movie, they have two different ways of phrasing it, and it is not by saying it's rape. The second time, I watched this movie probably a week ago. I should have reviewed it after, but I didn't. The second time, it's Robin says he's not Batman's son. Then Batman's talking to Nightwing, and he goes, maybe biological ties aren't enough to make a father, and make a father, or, a boy his son. But they just call it biological ties. They won't call it rape. Now, what really turned me off was a few years ago when they did mention it. I didn't even remember them even mentioning it in this movie until I rewatched it. I just thought they kind of scanned over the fact that Damien was a rape baby. But anyways, a few years ago there was another movie, don't remember what it was called, and they had like a light-hearted joke at Batman's rape. And it wasn't Batman making it. I've never liked that. I've never liked someone making rape jokes, period, unless it's happened to them. But Robin makes a joke about how Batman was raped in a future movie, about telling him to cover his drink because he doesn't want him to have more children or whatever. Anyway, that's besides the point. These movies always haven't really been in fair taste. Everyone always tries to say that the live-action movies are, worse than the animated movies. The animated movies are absolutely amazing. But Starfire is just kind of a sex object in these movies. Like, she's not a big role in this movie. We don't even hear her voice actor. They didn't hire her for this. But she tells Nightwing on the phone she's wearing sexy dress, and that makes Nightwing sad because he's babysitting Robin. And then in a future movie, there's like a joke about how she's talking to someone, and she I guess she doesn't realize it's not appropriate to talk about sex. Like she's like, "Oh, Nightwing is very proficient," and then Nightwing stops her, and then there's another one where he's on the phone with her and she's getting dressed. That's like mainly what they do with Starfire in these movies. I don't even really remember if she was in Apocalypse War. That movie was okay. I honestly don't know if I'll watch any more animated movies just because this one wasn't the best. There was a lot of corny dialogue, a lot of unnecessary flashbacks. They kind of break Batman's no-kill rule, which is something they always say is not shown in the animated movies. They're always like, oh yeah, Batman's so accurate. He's nothing like Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton or any of the other live action Batmans that have killed people. But he doesn't kill a person. But I still think this kind of breaks his no-kill rule. Batman's not a vegan. Let's get that out of the way. Because, it's kind of different to just eat an animal that's already been killed, that's in stores, than it is to actually kill an animal. Batman, when he's a young boy, thinks the Court of Owls killed his mom and dad, so when he sees an owl in his attic, he just fucking murders it with a bow and arrow, which I had completely forgot was in this movie. He just kind of breaks his no-kill rule real quick. Of course, it's just like most versus movies, there's only one fight scene. Like, they gotta build it up and then have a 2-minute fight scene. That's what happens in every fucking versus movie. I'm pretty sure Batman vs. Superman only had one fight scene. Wolverine versus Hulk. Thor versus Hulk. No, not Thor versus Hulk. Thor versus Wolverine. And so on and so on. They build up the tension. They kind of build up that they're going to fight. And then they fight each other in one scene. And then later they team up to beat a bigger evil. They even do it in Wolverine and the X-Men, the TV show. I just wish they don't have to make the entire fucking movie fighting, obviously, but why can't there be a handful of fights throughout the movie of the characters if it's called versus? If it's Batman versus Robin, have 3 or 4 fights in your 2-hour-long movie. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially when you want to name it Batman versus Robin. But that's not just making fun of this movie. That's typical in versus movies. But it is a criticism I wanted to bring up. Court of Owls are decent, except they get fucking murdered by one guy. I get they were weaker. They even state that in the movie. They've lost members, they're not as good. That's why they're trying to get Bruce Wayne to join in the first place. But they just get fucking murdered by Talon. Barely even fight back. They just run away like little bitches. And then he kills all of them. Every single goddamn one of the Court of Owls is dead. Except for the clones that they were already making. Which is insane. He killed everybody? That's crazy. Another thing about Talon is it's so loose. And it just doesn't make sense. He's grown to really like Robin. And he sees him as himself or whatever. He's like, oh yeah, my dad used to beat the shit out of me. He doesn't care about me. I see myself in Robin. And all Robin is Batman doesn't let me kill people. How do you see yourself in him? Just because he's a child? How? And he breaks a thing he's been following for decades? For this little kid? Because he sees himself in him? And I still don't see how he sees himself in him. How? Because you've been hanging out for 3 days? That's literally the timestamp they give in the movie. It's 3 days. He breaks the thing he's been following for decades for 3 days of hanging out with the boy wonder. Kinda goofy. Kevin Conroy is in this movie with the Batman in a few animated movies. He is Batman in the Arkham games, and he is Batman in both Injustice games. He sadly passed away, I think, last year. So it was cool to see him in this movie. He plays Batman's dad. He plays Thomas Wayne. So Batman watches Batman die. And then there's another scene where it's kind of like Batman watches Batman die while Batman kills Batman. Because there's this goofy scene where Batman gets drugged by the Court of Owls and Robin's dressed up like Batman and he kills Thomas Wayne while Batman is standing there watching it. So that was kind of cool. It was nice to hear Kevin Conroy in this movie. Honestly, wasn't terrible. Not something I would watch again. A lot of the fight scenes were pretty cool. There were some pretty brutal scenes. Batman gets his ass kicked by 2 clones, and the only reason he doesn't die is because they die first. Because the clones aren't perfected yet. So they, I don't know, explode after a certain amount of time. They say a certain amount of time, but I forgot. I think it was 17 hours, maybe 24. They say, well, the clones lasted way longer than the last ones, so we're close to perfecting them. But they still don't really perfect them, because when he ends up killing all the Court of Owls, Batman just turns on air conditioner and they're dead. Obviously, I'm over-exaggerating, but they're still weak to the cold. So later in the movie, all they do is turn the cold on to beat them. And they just completely ignore Tim and Jason, like they usually do in the animated movies for whatever reason. I don't think I've talked about it or criticized it before, but there's a scene where Robin and Nightwing are fighting, and Robin's beating his ass, so he says, "It looks like I'm the only Robin." Because I guess these are the only 2 Robins in this animated universe. Tim and Jason, fuck them. Even Duke Thomas, fuck him too. He's never been in anything. He was Easter egged in Titans. I think he was in a little baby preschool show, though, actually. Anyway, they just pretend Tim and Jason don't exist during that scene. Robin delivers a line about how he's Batman's real son, and Nightwing was just someone he took pity on, and then Robin gets mad at Batman later, because, he's a child. Children get angry at their parents sometimes. But Nightwing takes it like Robin was fully serious, and that he was, disowning Batman, and he's like, "Sure, you sure played me for a fool." And then Robin's like, "Not very hard." This kid's 10 years old. He can, say something to his parents and not mean it. But Nightwing took it 100%. His 10-year-old boy 100% meant it. It was kind of goofy. But yeah, it wasn't the worst movie. Just watching the movie for the fighting scenes may be worth it. Or you could just look up the fight scenes on YouTube and watch them. But that is about it. I really didn't care for this movie. I used to love it. I had watched this movie all the time when I was younger. It's almost fucking 10 years old now, which is crazy. I remember when the trailers were coming out. And I honestly don't think I ever even watched the first one. There's one a few years before this that sets up Damien if you needed that. I didn't, because I read the comics. Called Son of Batman. There's a few other ones. There's a bunch of animated movies. Probably only seen a handful of them. I saw Judas Contract. I don't think I ever reviewed it. I saw Justice League versus Teen Titans. Don't think I ever reviewed that one either. This is probably my first animated DC movie in a universe that I've reviewed. I did review Teen Titans Go to the Movies, but that's not a part of any universe. I mean, it's a part of the TV show that I've never watched. I've seen a few episodes, but not recently enough to review it. But, yeah, that's about it.